they normally one? I didn't know that.
I mean, you can't really tell because the glasses.
That's the beauty of glasses. You don't have to
what's
get your
happening.
eyebrows
There
done.
could be two eyebrows, could be one eyebrow. Are we live? Are people seeing this?
Probably.
All right.
It's Eyebrow Chat with Carolyn and Arsen.
Welcome to Eyebrow Chat. All right. Let's see. Where do we go to see who's here? I think I need an adult. Melissa? No? Okay, fine. You don't have to tell me. Comments. Here we go. Hi, everyone. Hi, Amy. Awesome. Well, everyone is coming in slowly. We are... Oh, nice. We are... I think we're live on YouTube also now. Cool. Hi, Joe, Carol, Holly. Hey, Holly. Nice to see you. Nice. Good. People are joining in. Awesome. So we're going to get started because we have a lot to cover today. This is our episode 46 of SEO for Bloggers webinar. This is our second episode of Top Hat Chats, which is a series of the SEO for Bloggers webinar, where we focus on in-depth conversations on specific topics and hopefully provide enough learning with very smart people and special guests. We are still going to continue, it's a long intro, we're still going to continue regular quarterly scheduled SEO for Bloggers webinars with Andrew, Casey, and myself, and with our wonderful host, Melissa, who is here in the background pressing all the cool buttons. And just like with all of our other webinars, please submit your questions using the chat. Make sure you type Q in the front of your question so that Melissa can surface them for us and we can get them answered for you. Today, we are joined by Carolyn Shelby. She is a principal SEO at Yoast, a really good friend of mine, a brilliant digital marketer, and a real deal queen of Ladonia, which is a micronation that borders Sweden. Today, Her Majesty and I will be chatting about crawling, indexing of blogs, essentially Google's ability to discover, crawl, and index your website. And of course, we will talk about everyone's favorite SEO plugin, Yoast, because that's where Carolyn's from. Queen Carolyn, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I am excited to be here. So
good. Welcome to Eyebrow Talk.
Thanks
for coming. Thanks for coming. We have a bunch of questions. So, our typical format, we have questions that were submitted when people registered. We're going to ask you these questions. You're going to provide us with amazing answers. But before we do, and just to cut down on some confusion and just to make sure that everybody is on the same page of what we're going to be talking about today, I want us to quickly have a chat about the difference between discoverability, crawlability, and indexability of a website and what that entails from a search engine perspective. So Google typically will discover a website and then try to understand what's there. It will crawl through it and index it. But it's obviously much more complex. Let's talk about that.
Okay. Well, that's a big topic. So I think where people tend to get confused is when they think the crawling versus the indexing, I think, is the biggest confusion point. The search engine has to crawl your site. It starts at the homepage, or it starts at an entry point. The entry point is usually where it discovers the link. So if it first finds your site on a link into a deep page, that's going to be the entry point, and it's going to start crawling out from there. They call it a spider for a reason, because it creepy crawls like a spider, right? It has to crawl your site. It has to be able to traverse through your site to understand exactly what your site's about, find content, collect the content, and then sort of take it back to the mothership to be processed. I was actually explaining this to someone who's very new to SEO the other day, and I said it's like it goes out, the little drone, sort of like your Roomba, your vacuum cleaner. Like it has to scoot around and figure out where the edges of the room are, and then run the pattern of the room before it actually starts vacuuming, because it needs to know where it's going and what it's going to do. That's sort of like what the crawlers do. They go and they Roomba out your site. And if you have links that are written in a way that don't allow it to enter the room, it skips that room. If you have a steaming pile of dog poop in the middle of your carpet, it's going to hopefully avoid that. And if it doesn't avoid it, it will run over it and inhale all of the poop and then pollute everything. So
was this a traumatic experience that you went through?
No, I haven't, but I've heard other people go through it, and it's horrible. horror stories about just dog poo smeared all over the house. It's just bad. Anyway, I genuinely think the Roomba analogy is probably the most accurate analogy that we could get at this point, because there's similar functions. But anyway, so that's the crawling part. If there's anything that you're doing that is impeding crawl or preventing it from getting, from crawling around your site, it's going to miss things. It's going to miss rooms. It's going to miss huge sections of the website because you've blocked its access, basically.
Right.
Now, indexing is what happens with all that data after it collects it and takes it back to the mothership for processing. So it's finding things, and it's almost like we were just in California and we visited a gold mine. So the gold mines in the South, the gold is trapped inside rock. You have to mine a whole bunch of rock and then take the rock outside and process it. They pulverize it into dust and then they shake it until the gold comes out. That's sort of like what the search engines do with all that data that comes back. The data that comes back from the crawlers is just ore. It's unprocessed, right? It's everything they could grab and stick in their little wagon, and then they took it back to the processing plant. The processing plant, they smash it up into little pieces that they can understand, and then they reassemble the pieces so that they can go, okay, I'm going to keep this part, I'm going to keep that part. This is junk. I'm going to throw that away, and that to index, because now they've processed all of that raw data that the crawlers brought back, and they understand what's going on, and now they can pick and choose what they're going to include in the index. And being included in the index means you're now available to be found by the searchers. So there's that. Discoverability, on the other hand, is how easy are you making it for the crawlers to find you initially in the first place? Are you submitting a sitemap? Is your sitemap full of garbage, or is your sitemap full of good things? Are you creating links out on the internet that link back to your site for it to find? Are you doing something stupid as it tries to come into your site that would block it from entering? So it's like, you might be sending out the party invitations, but if you have a bouncer at the door that's only letting certain people in, that's going to affect its ability to discover your content, because it has to get into crawl it before it can discover it. The crawling is how they find stuff. So I think that's probably everything.
I think you did a very good job explaining it. Everybody loved the analogy. Okay, so with that, and I like that, is there trashing your sitemap, right? So with that, here's a question that's relevant to this. Does Google crawl every page of the website, or is there really such a thing as crawl budget?
There is really
Google, at one point say oh, I've seen enough.
There is such a thing as crawl budget. There is also such a thing as I've seen enough. So all of these things can be true at the same time. The way no one knows exactly how it functions, but we have a really good guesstimate of what happens. We know that back in the day, a long time ago, I used to explain this as it was a hungry caterpillar, and your website is a leaf, and it's just chumping away down the leaf, right, until it gets full. And every bit of thing that's on your page is like a thing that it eats. So when it gets full, it just goes back to the mothership to purge, basically, and get rid of the contents of its stomach, so it's hungry again and can go eat some more. So crawl budget is sort of, how much energy is it going to have to expend to consume this piece of website? How many times has it already done that? And does it keep encountering the same thing that looks like it's too much to bite off, so it just starts ignoring that thing because it already knows that it's too big to bite off?
Right.
So when you're dealing with crawl budget, ideally, you would want to not have things on your website that are too big for it to eat. You would also not want to have copious quantities of duplicate content or empty pages that you're making it crawl and expend energy on. Calendar programs used to be really bad at that. There were calendar programs that would, if you clicked on a link, it would make a page. So if it started crawling through your calendar, it would keep making pages because they were generated on the fly for every day that it visited. And if it's a calendar that never ends, you've got that bot stuck in that calendar that never ends. And 99.9999% of the pages it encounters aren't even going to have an event on them. It's just going to be a calendar, an empty shell. So it's going to see that. It's going to remember that this was a pain in my butt. I don't want to get stuck in that anymore. I'm just going to ignore everything that matches that beginning pattern in that URL. And now it's going to ignore everything in your calendar directory. Forever.
Whether you wanted to ignore it or not.
It's
so
like,
there could be pages in there that you want crawled.
It's like that time that I went to a restaurant. I had a salad. Salad didn't taste quite right. Got nasty food poisoning. You know what that taught me? I'm never eating a salad from that place again. It doesn't matter if they change. It could be a different chef. It could have been extenuating circumstances. It doesn't matter. I'm scared now. I'm never going back there again. Or if I do go back there, I'm certainly not getting the salad.
Okay, so that brings us to the next question here. What page types on my blog, and our audience primarily are bloggers and publishers here, what page types on my blog should be crawled more? Which should be crawled less? And how can we influence that?
So I would say the pages you want crawled more often would be pages like your recipes, your category pages, and your cornerstone posts. So things that you deem important, those are the things that you're going to want to have crawled more often. The things that you'd want crawled less often, tag archives, maybe, depending on how you're using them. And most people use them wrong. So I would say probably not the tag archives, unless you're one of the few who's using them right, in which case, good for you, and get those crawled often. Any type of filtering URL. So if you have things that start adding filter parameters to URLs, you don't want the crawlers to encounter those and start using them, because it's just a different presentation of the same content it's already found. It's not going to add anything to the crawler's understanding. I would block those. Comments, probably don't need those. Filters, comments.
Attachment URLs for images.
Attachment URLs, things like that, I would definitely block. So there's a way that you can do that too. You can use your robots.txt. You can use no index. I wouldn't use
Yoast?
and Yoast does this. You can also use canonicals to help indicate what's the core. But I think using robots.txt to explicitly say, hey, filter pattern that I have a lot on my website, just please, robot, please don't crawl that. And that's what the robots.txt does. The robots.txt says, I would like you to crawl this. I would like you to not crawl that. In fact, I forbid you from crawling that. What the robots.txt cannot do, though, is prevent things from being indexed. So even if you tell the robot, whatever you do, don't crawl this entire section over here. If somebody somewhere else on the internet links into that section and Google finds that link and then can start scooting around inside of it, Google's found it. Now it knows about it. Nothing you can do about that. You can't make it forget. And it might index that stuff. So if that stuff needs to not be indexed, that's a separate function. It's called a no index, and you can apply that on the page level. So robots.txt controls the robot behavior, the crawling behavior. And then the no index is a signal to Google that you would prefer to not have that be in Google at all.
So like robots.txt is essentially almost like a gatekeeper that sometimes will do a really poor job at letting Google in. But then once Google's in, there's instructions for the robots once Google is on the page, whether Google should should crawl through it but not index it.
You can't tell it not index it.
On page robots.
On page. Page.
Good. Okay. So, and we typically can control. We can create and typically it's not needed for smaller websites. Larger websites, but you want to optimize for crawl budget. And there is a lot of questions on crawl budgets. And I think it's been kind of overblown in terms of a crawl budget optimization. And unless you have millions of pages, at that point, I would say you have to kind of worry about it. Especially with WordPress, Google has kind of figured out the structure of WordPress and how URLs could be potentially formed. So Google can crawl, even if you're not doing a good job at kind of optimizing the crawl budgets or where Google is going. Google kind of has made sense of that ecosystem by now. But with that, there's a question here: how to ensure that a site gets crawled regularly?
You can confirm that the site is being crawled regularly by looking at your log files. There are giveaways that the crawlers announce themselves. They're not secretive about it. Cloudflare, if you've got Cloudflare, there are ways that you could monitor for bot traffic there. If you're not getting crawled on a regular basis, it could be a couple things. The most likely culprit is that you don't update on a regular basis, but I would imagine that you're updating fairly frequently. Create signals that show that there's signs of life, I guess, is the easiest way to say it. So are you posting on any of the socials with links back to your site? Are you doing something on your site that pings out as, hey, I'm here, I'm alive, please come pay attention to me? It's not difficult to do that. Now, I guess I would wonder, what would make you think you're not getting crawled on a regular basis? I would say that if you suspect that you're not being crawled, it might be more that something's wrong with your site and it's being crawled, it's just not being understood. And then that understanding is not being reflected in the index, because I think it's unusual that you would not be crawled. Unless something has happened and you've accidentally blocked the crawlers, it's very difficult to get banned from being crawled. Like, that's just not a thing.
Could potentially be like you just migrated from one website to another, one theme to another.
Well,
There could be
that's a blocking issue, I would say, where there's something technically miscommunicated that is either causing the crawler to get lost between point A and point B, or it's getting the wrong address. Something's
Right.
technically wrong. It's not a function of the crawler has just decided that it doesn't want to visit you anymore.
Right. And typically this is more like on the advanced side when you want to start looking at your log files. I posted a link in here for Google Search Console crawl stats report. It's kind of buried in the settings, like it's all the way at the bottom on the left hand side. But there's a link there, bit.ly link, and there's a video directly from Google on how to read that report. And you can kind of get a feel for how frequently Google is visiting your website without having to like pull in log files and all of that. Here's a good question. Should we request Google to crawl a page or a post after we publish it or update it? If so, what would be the examples of like when to do it?
So when I was at the newspaper, we would immediately cross-post or announce an article publication to Twitter, and doing that would cause Google to come fetch it quicker.
Right. Well, hang on. Let's explain that. The mechanism of that, right? So, sorry, I got ice in my mouth. So you're basically, you're instead of going to Google and saying, please crawl this, you're publishing a link to this new article to a platform like Twitter or X, whatever, where we know Google is rapidly crawling new content, especially from like if you're a publication, you have you're consistently posting. We know that there's a direct pipeline from Twitter to Google, and Google sees this new link, or there was, right? Same thing with Google Plus back in the day. We used to go there before we would even go to Search Console, because that would get picked up right away, right?
So if you're a small site and you go to like through Google Search Console and you say, could you please crawl this page for me? You're going to go to the back of the line because you're not a high priority customer. Like,
right.
It really does favor sites that are big. It wants sites that are big, that get that are popular, that get requested a lot, that get visited a lot, that get high click-through rates. So you could ask it to, but it's not going to do it immediately. I think you have a better shot at getting that URL crawled if you can, even if it's somewhat artificial, generate outside interest in it, some velocity. So posting it to Reddit, posting it to Twitter, posting it to Facebook, not so much because it's kind of a walled garden.
Right.
Maybe LinkedIn if it's appropriate, but please, for the love of God, if it's not appropriate for LinkedIn, don't put it on LinkedIn because I hate that. But ditto Pinterest, like, use some judgment. But you get the gist.
Right. So, it's Google will crawl your content at one point. It might not be the same day. It might not be the next day. And again, it all depends on the quality of the website, what's happening during that time. And we do notice that sites that are generally in better health from a technical perspective are much more hospitable to Google's crawls. Go ahead. Yeah.
Especially on smaller sites, Google is more likely to come check your homepage to see if there's been any changes. They'll check your sitemap, they'll check your homepage. If you have a section of your homepage where you have recently posted or most recently posted articles, that's going to help that new article get found faster. If it's new, but it's like 3 clicks deep, it could be a while before it finds it, because it's got to traverse through the site and decide that it's worth visiting 3 more levels of that site before it discovers that there's a new article there, because it is discoverability. If it's on the homepage, it's going to find it right away. And this is why they say that people talk a lot about the depth of your site, and people think that that just means in the URL, you just have everything hanging off the root. That is not what that means. It means what is literally 1 click away from the homepage. So if you want it to be found faster, find a way to get it on the homepage for a little while.
Right. And a lot of you who use some of the themes from Skylar or Cultivate, you already have that ability where your content, especially the food bloggers, where your content gets pushed to the homepage, maybe supposed. And at the same time, internal linking is a very, very good helper at getting your content discovered. One of the things that we constantly talk about, especially with checklists of what to do before you publish, is one of the last things that we talk about is once you publish, to make sure you go in and build internal links from relevant sources within your website. Cool. Okay, so let's shift focus a little bit. So we talked about discoverability. We talked about indexability, requesting index. Let's zoom out. Let's look at it from like a architectural topological perspective of a website, right? And there's a question here, and we're talking about like structure, your categories, internal linking, nesting parent-child relationships. Can you share an overview of how a site structure organization can impact crawling and indexing? That's a good question.
And again, I think that largely goes back to there's 2 different functions here. There is the physical connection points, right? And then there's the understanding, the contextual understanding. So having your categories and having your tags and having a logic to how you structure your site helps with the understanding. The crawling and discoverability architecture, though, is 100% dependent on the links. It's the links in your navigation. It's the internal linking from page to page. That's your architecture. And that's not at all dependent on what category you have something in or what tag you have something in. You could have a link in your top nav that goes to most popular recipes, and every recipe in that dropdown could come from a different category. So the categories in that case have nothing to do with what's in that dropdown menu. But that dropdown menu is one of the most important things on your page because it's in your top nav, and Google's going to find that, or the crawler's going to find that on every single page of your site. So the things that are linked to in that are going to have a higher priority and are going to be perceived as being more important, because again, it's a number of clicks away from the homepage. So how deep do you have to go to find that piece of content? And if that content's in the top nav, it's 1 click, right? If you have to go to a category page about ground beef and then another subcategory or a tag about Mexican food, and then you find the taco recipe, that's 3-4 clicks that's going to be buried. So for crawling purposes, I would make sure that your navigation is structured around your understanding of your target audience and making it easy and logical for them to find the stuff that they need to find. And presumably that will help Google find the stuff that the people who want to find it will find it, and then it's all
right. So kind of assuming the perspective of the way I'm presenting the structure of my content to the user from like a logical navigational path, right? We can safely assume that that's how Google's going to interpret our structure versus looking strictly at categories or how our URL is formatted with directories.
Yeah, so the URL formatting really plays no role at all in helping Google understand. It doesn't help it crawl your site any better, and it doesn't necessarily. It's not a great help in helping it understand the
Right.
architecture of your site. I think that there are aspects of that that can be helpful. Um, is it helpful to clarify that your taco recipe belongs in Mexican food and not maybe Colombian food? Because I presume they have tacos too. Everyone has tacos. Or American food. You wouldn't want to have it listed under American food unless it's
Right.
a very American. Here's an example. Let's say you have a recipe for Taco Bell tacos. That would fall
Right.
under American food because it's not
Right.
Mexican. But you have a different recipe that's a very authentic Mexican recipe that you want to have in the Mexican category. So it's more of it's not so much communicating to Google the structure of your site as it's communicating context to the specific articles that
Right.
you have. So the categories are important because they help with context. Google might say, "Hey Bob, I see that you're looking for Americanized tacos. I know that Jane's site over here has 12 different nationalities of tacos and American's one of them. So I'm going to go over here and grab this American taco recipe and serve this up in this recipe carousel for you."
Right.
So it's important for context. It's important for organizing the SERPs, the results, right? But
Right.
it's not hierarchical. It's not important to the structure of the site, and it
Right.
won't affect the crawlability or the discoverability of the content. That
Right.
is
So,
strictly mechanical navigation and crawling.
right. So a post can perform very, very well and still live inside of an uncategorized category.
Yeah,
Right. Right. But where you organize that post, and that post can live across multiple categories, where you organize that post signals to Google from a context perspective and even
yes,
maybe topical depth, like explaining to Google, hey, I am an expert at Americanized tacos because I have this category, Americanized taco recipes. And I have, let's say, 10 posts per page, and this category has 10 pages and pageant in its sequence. So we have 100 assets on the topic of Americanized tacos. So most likely there's good information here. I'm going to trust the site on this topic. Uh, um,
yeah. So I know, I guess silos aren't like as big of a thing as they used to be, but siloing your content is still, I think, a helpful concept to understand.
right,
So the bigger the silo is, the more good stuff is inside that silo. You want to make sure that you have, but you don't want to cross pollute your silos. Like you don't want your soybeans mixed in with your corn type of stuff. Um, I'm so Midwest. I'm sorry. Um, the
You dig it? Let's go.
yeah, it's just a it shows that you've got depth. It shows that you're an expert. Google likes deep wells or tall silos, but they don't
Right,
like cookie sheets. You don't want to be
right,
broad and flat. You want to be deep and narrow.
right.
And
Uh,
if you have several deep and narrow silos, veins of gold, I don't know which I've used so many
so
metaphors now. I'm so
is it
confused.
safe to say that silos with silos slash categories taxonomies can be, when properly used, can also serve as clusters or cornerstone
They
pieces
are
too?
clusters. Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Cornerstones not so
Like
much. I
they've
mean,
been rebranded from silos to clusters.
okay. So I'll show you clusters. See, clusters reminds me of like pecan clusters, those are just tasty chocolate things. And now I'm hungry.
Good. Okay. So, we have one question here. Um, I have a pop up on my site. Can Google keep crawling the page after the pop up arrives?
Yes. However, depending on how the pop-up is executed, there is a high probability that what happens is when they see, I can see this in my head. I've got like this matrix thing going on, and
Wait, wait, let's go.
I wish I could show you guys what I see.
Talk through it. We're here for
So
this.
so you guys have looked at the view source, right? You've looked at the view source. It's just so
Right.
imagine you're the crawler and you pop the view source. You're like, I'm just going to crawl through here and I'm reading it top to bottom. Here I go. A delayed a delayed pop-up. So he's like, boop, 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 and it just injects additional content into what had been a solid block of text, right? So it's like, food, 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 buy some stuff. And you're like, wow, that's not relevant to what I was just looking at. What
Right,
just
right,
happened? And it's not so much that it stops. I mean, it can stop. If there's something broken in the JavaScript that gets injected, it can stop, but it doesn't
right.
usually. It just gets a little confused because now it's sort of injecting stuff that wasn't relevant to the article into the middle of the article, and it gets confused. So I would say there's a higher probability that it's going to dilute the relevance of the article than it is
Right.
unless it's popping up something that's broken. Sometimes with programmatic ads, some of the ads break, and there's so many ads being pumped around the system. You don't always catch the broken ad when it comes through, but sometimes
Right.
the broken ad comes through while Google's there, and then that particular crawl is going to be like, I don't know what the hell just happened, but I'm going to leave. Like, I don't know what this was. I'm out of here, and then it might not come back for a couple days.
Looks weird. I'm
So
out. Right.
yeah,
Right.
it's like it saw a house, it ran away. It happens, but
Right.
and that's a situation where if you're a very high volume site and you find that's happening a lot, especially maybe on your homepage, you need to reach out to your ad partner and say, hey, I've caught these ads coming through and these ads are broken. I don't want this advertiser anymore sending stuff to my site, or you need to get your stuff cleaned up, Mr. Ad Company.
Right.
There's things you can do, but you're generally only in a position to throw a very high volume earner for them. Like when I was at Disney, I could do stuff like that. Get these people
Right.
out of
You
here.
can flex.
Out.
Right. You can flex. Right. Right. Because it's
Yeah,
just
yeah.
right.
But
Right.
if
Right.
you're not there, then it's it's
Right.
more like, please, please, sir, help me.
Um, okay, let's shift into more of Yoast stuff.
Okay.
Okay, so I have a bunch of questions here. Actually, most of the questions that came in had to do with Yoast. Okay, let's start with this one. I think this should be a good one, a fun one. What top 3 things should content creators focus on when utilizing Yoast?
Well,
Let's start from 3.
that's a big question.
Let's do a YouTube style. Coming in at number 3.
uh, I don't know. So the first thing I would tell people when you're using Yoast is to make sure you actually go through the configuration and configure everything, because the number one thing that I encounter when someone says to me, I've got Yoast and I don't think it's doing anything, I go in and I'm like, well, you do have to configure it, because if you don't configure it, it's not actually going to do anything. So there's a thing called the first time configurator, the FTC. When you get into it, that is not the first time complete configuration. That is the bare minimum to make it work configuration. I implore you, go look at all the other settings, and anything that isn't grayed out that you've got access to set, please set it. Set a default for it. Make sure you've got a default set for your descriptions, because if you don't write a description and you don't have a default set, then the description will be blank. But you have the opportunity to set a default, and the default can be like percentage excerpt percentage. What that'll do is that'll say, I'm going to take the excerpt, and if I don't have an excerpt defined, it'll default to grabbing like the beginning of the article. And boom, now you've got a description, even though you were too lazy to set it on the page. So set
Right.
all of those. I know that for organizations in the schema, which is kind of in the beginning, if you do not have an image provided, it will not include your organization schema. So for the love of God, provide an image if it asks for an image. Like, do the things it asks. Just make sure that you've filled it out completely. That goes a long way towards making sure everything works. Chasing the green lights, I would say, is not.
Okay, go. Because we have more
Yeah,
questions. But yeah, you go.
chasing the green lights is not a thing I would hyperventilate over. Like, is it great if everything's green? Sure. Did you start chopping up your sentences to make sure that they're all short enough to get that green light if they're mostly there? No. So there's they're recommendations. Those are guidelines. Is it great if you follow all the guidelines? Yes. Are there situations where the guideline isn't 100% applicable to yours? Also, yes. And if your audience in your article is discussing something very specific, but it's something very specific that the system thinks maybe the system doesn't like it for some reason, you can't change the topic. You serve the topic, you serve your reader the best you can. And if the machine is not 100% happy with it, that just means you're an edge case and not average. And that's not bad, you know? So don't get so fixated on those green lights. The green lights are wonderful. I love the green lights, but like you're probably not going to die if you don't have 100% green.
Right. And you definitely and I'm guilty for this. And I say this very frequently. I say, don't chase the green light. Do not chase the green light, because it's going to position you just from following that methodology. It's going to put you in a position where you can potentially over optimize, where you're going to try to fill in as many blanks as possible without understanding the intricacies of repeating the same keyword in the headings and repeating that over and over. And that kind of leads us to the next question here. Yoast SEO makes a ton of recommendations. SEO experts say following all of the recommendations might lead to over optimization. Where do we kind of draw the line for this?
Okay, well, I don't know what SEO experts said that, and well, you and I can have a conversation later then.
Right.
I think it's difficult to over optimize unless you are deliberately being boneheaded about how you're interpreting the guidance. Like there was a certain level of guidance that I found to be particularly objectionable, and it was related to the number of words in the sentence, and like everything had to be shorter than like 10 words long or something. Like, I don't think in sentences that short. This is beneath me.
Right.
And I went through and I tried to make things as short as I could. And then I literally started to feel like I was in, Dick and Jane territory, where like Dick has a ball, Jane threw the ball. You're a good reader. You're a good writer. Read your content and you'll know if it feels off. You'll know if it feels stilted. Don't force yourself to do something that feels wrong to you to appease, a machine.
Google, right? Well, look, we always recommend. We say, look, write the content, write it for humans. Don't pay attention to the green light. Read it back to yourself. Obviously, you want to sprinkle in some SEO, but it's not the end of the You can always add more stuff later. It doesn't have to be a green light when you publish your post. As long as you've read it to yourself and it feels like it's written naturally, and you're not over optimizing or writing for search engines, you should be good to publish. Okay.
There's there's a caveat though that I want to add. So there's the green lights that are related to like how many words are in a sentence. Those are the Flesch reading ease score. That is the way it's defined. The scoring, I think, is part of the problem with the scoring, is that you want to get a high score because a high score means it's easier to read by younger people. So I think they'd say, oh, you want to strive for an 8th grade reading level. So to me, that's like, why would I dumb down my writing, right? But that's not entirely what it means. And it's sort of an easy way to explain writing for clarity, but it is possible to be clear in your writing and still score well on that, or not be clear in your writing and still score well on that. The reason you want to have shorter sentences that are that are kind of one thought per paragraph, make things easy to understand and extract, is in the process of becoming less for Google now and more for the LLMs, because that's how the LLMs are understanding and tokenizing your data. And I actually have an article coming out this month that talks just all about that. So I think that's going to be in Search Engine Journal in a couple
Nice.
weeks. So
Very cool. So LLM is large language models. That's artificial intelligence.
The AI stuff, right? So
Right.
like ChatGPT, AI overviews, there's a particular way that they like to have the content structured that makes it easy for them to understand what you're saying, and it makes it easy for them to cite you. It makes it easy for them to grab it and say and put you in the AI overview. So when it comes back and you said, "Can you find me a good recipe for an American taco?" It'll say, "Actually, yeah, I can, because this lady writes really well. So go look at her stuff."
We've picked that up. And that makes a lot of sense.
Oh, well, sorry, I wasn't aware I was telling you something you already knew.
I'm willing to learn from you. We have a lot, especially the LLM stuff is so intriguing, especially how recipe publishers can benefit from it. Because in some situations, there's like people are just like they're blocking, they don't want to be crawled for that. Is there a way? There's another question. Is there a way to bulk no index pages using Yoast?
Right now, I don't know that there is. I don't know that you would want to, though. Like, what is the point of having a page if you're going to hide it from the search engines?
Right. So, in certain situations where, and especially with us, when we do like a content review and we find a bunch of pages that should not be presented to Google for indexing, right? And let's say these are blog posts that were written back in the day, they don't have much information. The topic is not really like interesting from a volume perspective, but they should still be available on the website for a social traffic, email, newsletter traffic. So we want to no index some of those pages.
I don't know that I would do that personally, but that's just
okay. Me. Why?
Because I think so. Just because you no index something doesn't mean Google doesn't find it and doesn't know it's there. And I think these signals that it's sending, that I've got all this content on my site that I don't want to share with everyone, and that I'm not proud enough of to have included in the index. I feel like that's sending a bad message, but I don't have any proof of that. I just know that makes me feel bad inside, and I try to avoid things that make me feel bad inside.
Right. So like let's say this is content that an example, things I did today, and there's 100 of these posts where the only difference in the title and the H1 and just like the structure of the post is the change in the date of things I did today. And it's
why wouldn't you just delete that?
Well, maybe there's value in having that on the website for other purposes, for, like I said, sending traffic through email, sending traffic through social. But you just don't want that crawled. You don't want, I mean, you're okay with it having it crawled. You don't want to have it indexed.
Well, so if you're okay with having it crawled, crawling things and then not indexing things, it starts to get tricky. If you're okay with just not having it crawled in the first place, you could block that whole section in the robots.txt. Right. But individual no indexing is not an easy thing to accomplish with the tool. It would so the way I would do it, you can go to bulk edit, and I'm pretty sure that you can like just click things all the way down. You could probably do a toggle, but I think for that particular item, you might have to just manually go through and click everything, but you do it from a single screen. At least it's not like you have to open up the page and then go to the right? I don't think it's that complicated. I do think you can do it with a bulk edit. I also know that if you're at all good with spreadsheets, you could go into the database and you could do some SQL magic and set large sections. But if you're not good with SQL and databases, I would urge you not to do what I just said, because if you mess up, you can destroy everything.
Don't do it.
Yeah, that's like recreationally playing with radioactive material. Like maybe don't if you don't know what you're doing. So
we usually say don't even look, don't breathe in that direction. Don't.
Okay, I'm sorry.
You have no business going.
Well, you asked me how I do it. That's how I do it.
I mean, yeah. Listen, I get it. Well, the question was, can we do it in Yoast? And maybe there is a way you can select a bunch of posts, and maybe there's an action from a drop down that allows you to do it that way. Yeah. Okay. Next question, and this is like, so there's two of these questions, and I kind of want to format this in a cool way. So it's about Yoast. So one question is, what are some cool features of Yoast that we might not be using on premium and then the free version? And then there's another question, which is the least known feature of Yoast plugin that food bloggers should be aware of? Tough questions today, huh?
Gosh. Okay. The premium version has an orphaned content filter. Are you guys familiar with the orphaned content filter?
Well,
So
let's
it
explain
will,
what orphan content is.
well, so the Yoast definition and the like the auditing tool definition are maybe slightly different. The Yoast definition is it's looking for content that doesn't have any in body links to it, rather than any links at all.
Right.
Like if you have a link to a page and that link only exists in your footer, or the link only exists in your navigation, but there's no body copy links over to that page, Yoast will count that as being orphaned. So the utility there is if you're looking for building up your internal links, you now have a list of pages that could use a little affection. And it's nice to not have any little orphan Annies, floating around your site, because then they get discontented and they start revolting and singing aggressive songs about slipping people Mickeys.
Unacceptable.
The full social previews I think is pretty cool. I think if you've forgotten to fill out, if you've forgotten to go through all of the configurations, you could very easily miss the full social previews, because especially if you're on premium, you can define a default social image. So maybe not all of your images grab correctly if you're just posting them, that default, it's going to take the first image thing. Maybe that first image isn't the most optimal for social. Maybe you want to go into, Canva or something and make a nice social image. You can upload those a default in the settings, and then you have the option on the per page level of overriding some of the social settings too, if you have a special one just for that article. So
Right.
that's definitely a premium thing. There's the redirect manager. That's one that I think can be misused. Maybe don't play with that if you have questions. Internal linking suggestions, I don't know how many people are using that, but I would think that as a content and a conscientious content creator, I would not need internal linking suggestions, because I know where my content is and I have a good idea of what I want to promote. So I don't know how helpful that one is.
Right.
If you have premium, you have access to the AI enhancements. And I don't know how many people who don't have premium are aware of that, but there are AI enhancements now to your titles and to your meta descriptions. And I think it can help you pick keywords now too. They've been every month they come out with new features, and it's all very difficult to keep up with. But the titles and the descriptions I think are helpful, because especially with, sometimes you have a series and you've got a lot of articles that are kind of about the same thing, but they're not, they're just enough different. You start falling into an, oh my God, I don't know how I could possibly write one more title and make it different from the last one, and my brain just will not work anymore. And then you can press the little sparkle button, and the sparkle button will go, oh, try these. And it comes up with 5 new ones. And even if you don't use them exactly, it's just sort of like this little, you roll up to a roadblock, writer's block, and it just sort of gives you a little boost to get you over that hump. And it helps. And I think it makes life a lot better.
I love that.
Oh, just one more thing. The nice thing about the AI enhancements in premium, we don't charge you extra fees to use the AI. There's no situation that we've yet encountered where someone gets cut off or they can't use the AI anymore. It's a flat rate. It's transparent pricing. You're not going to be in a situation where you're paying for premium and then you have to pay extra to use the AI. So do play with that, because we've been working really hard on it for like last year.
I haven't seen it. I'm definitely going to play around with it.
How dare you?
I'm sorry. I have dishonored.
In the name of John Cena, how dare you? Sorry, my kid says that all the time. I don't know why.
So let's talk about. There's a question here, and I think it's a good segue into because you're coming to us with a little discount for Yoast, right? For people who are listening, right? So it's a good segue. So I am on the free version. What is the best? And this is an actual question. What is the best use of Yoast Premium, if any?
The best use, I think I would say the social previews and the you get more schema available to you. You get the social previews, which especially in like the food blogger content creator space, the social's huge, and the ability to control the fine-tune control that you get over those social previews makes your life so much easier, because you're not then having to rebuild everything in Twitter and rebuild everything in Facebook and rebuild everything every time you're sharing out. So I love those. And then, the AI stuff, I love that. Those are the things I love.
Tell us about this discount that you tell us about this discount that you came with today.
Oh, so I don't know if everybody knows, but Yoast is 15 years old this year. So we are having a 15% off sale, as one does when one turns 15. If you were to go to yoast.com/yoast-15th-anniversary,
and we'll post this up for you guys here in a second.
Yeah, there's a discount code there, and it's on all of our products. So if you have a Shopify site, if you want to get one of the add-ons for like local or news or video, it is a 15% discount off everything, and that includes premium. So, I mean, please, if you have not upgraded to premium, I invite you to do so. Oh, and there's a bundle. So if you want to get premium, but you think you might want some of the other add-ons and you're just not sure which ones, get the premium bundle, and then you get everything, like the whole shoot and match. You get everything all in one, access to that. Plus, any of those purchases gets you 1 year's access to Yoast Academy. So if you want to learn about anything, we have certificates, if you want to get a piece of paper, we have all of that action going on. So please, please, please join us. Come to the dark side. No, we're not dark side. Purple side. Come to the purple side.
We have cookies. Come to the dark side. We have cookies. Awesome. Okay, cool. All right. So let's answer some of these questions that came in while you and I were chatting. We have a question here, and these are actually really, really, really good questions. So this means that we had a really good conversation. Okay. So KL asks, you mentioned the importance of click depth in helping Google find your post sooner. Does that mean it's better to have cornerstone content, aka categories, on the homepage so Google prioritizes, or could be not categories? I don't know what the questioner was writing. So having those on the homepage so Google prioritizes crawling those. What are the elements, recent posts, seasonal content, etc., would also benefit from being placed on the homepage?
So cornerstone content is a Yoast concept, and that is you're telling the system to remember that this article is basically like the authoritative article about American tacos. So you have 50 different articles about American tacos, but this is the cornerstone article about American tacos. So if that concept is really only for within the plugin uses that, and the plugin uses it for several things and soon to be several more. But it will prioritize that particular article when it's making internal linking recommendations. It remembers that this article is important.
Right.
That being said, that's not going to affect how Google finds it. So if you feel that this is a popular enough thing that it would be beneficial for Google to see it in the navigation, it would then therefore also have to be something that your users would want to see in the navigation or on the homepage, right?
Right.
I think it's sort of a circular process where things that you put on the homepage get seen as being important, and then they become important because they get crawled more and they get more traffic. So I would prioritize putting things on the homepage if they satisfy a user need. So your user's coming in and the user's definitely going to want the option of looking at this thing. Put that on the homepage. It's new and you want to draw attention to it because the user might like it. Put that on the homepage. It's a function that the user is going to want to, it answers a question or provides a solution to something the user is going to have a problem with. Put that on the homepage. That's what you should put on the homepage. Whether or not something is deemed cornerstone is kind of a secondary thing. It's like let's switch to football for my analogies. It's like getting a franchise tag. You don't get the franchise tag until you've proven that you're a franchise tag level player. So it doesn't get the cornerstone tag until it's proven that it's solid and it's important. You can't artificially make someone a franchise player. They prove themselves and they become indispensable. And when that thing is indispensable, then that thing gets the tag.
So, Carol had a question here. How do we determine which content to label as cornerstone content?
The cornerstone is meant to be like the canon, the source of authority for that particular topic. So whatever article you feel is, if someone asked you a question about A, the article that is cornerstone is the article you would instantly send people to read about that and become experts, right? So it is cornerstones on buildings are the first stone that you lay. It's the thing that holds the building up.
Right.
Think about it like that.
We got a few minutes. I want to quickly roll through a few questions here. Is navigation dropdown more important than links on the homepage? I'm going to say links on the homepage are more important.
I was going to say that too. I mean, navigation is great, but body copy links are pretty universally more powerful than navigational links. That being said, your navigation links do appear on every single page of the site.
But how are they prioritized? Because there was the reasonable surfer model, right, where links inside the body of the post are weighted a little bit higher than navigation or sidebar or footer.
Links inside the post used to also get scrape lots. So when people were stealing your content, they would steal those links too, and you'd want to seed the links into your body copy so they would get stolen with everything else, and at least you get some benefit from people reusing your content.
Right. People who know it, right.
I would
both.
Yes, both. I would put them in both places.
Right. So I would say that think of it from a perspective of, Carolyn, you touched on this. Navigation is more of how do I get around on your website, and you're telling the user how things are organized. You're directing the user on how you structure things, and that Google pays attention to that from that perspective. Homepage it's the page, the cover to your book, right? That's the starting point. So from there, you want to link out to content that's important, and you touched on that as well. But keep in mind that not everyone starts their journey on your homepage. No. That's why navigation is important, because somebody will land directly on the inner post, on a recipe post, or on the travel post, and then the navigation and breadcrumbs, which leads me to the next question: how do breadcrumbs affect a post, where a post is? I guess how a post is, where the post is organized.
It helps the user navigate back up and get out of. This is a concept called recirculation. When you get somebody in an article, you don't want them to stop reading the article and then leave. You want them to scoot around your site and look for other stuff, which is why you have, related articles at the bottom. But the breadcrumbs at the top help them say, you know what, I really like this article about raspberry flavored jujubes. I would like to see what other flavored jujubes they have. So the breadcrumbs will, assuming that that's how you've logically laid out your site, you're on the page about raspberry jujubes. If I go up one level to just all the jujubes, I will then be able to find that you have grape and apricot and lemon lime.
Right.
It's all about the jujubes.
So, they also, when properly marked up, and Yoast does a really good job at marking up breadcrumbs. When properly marked up, breadcrumbs also serve as internal links. They signal to structure.
Oh yeah, they're totally internal links. Links are links. If it looks like a link, it's a link. Right.
And then also it signals to Google from a logical navigational perspective where the content is, and also and that's like my way to, like, I landed on your potato soup recipe, and now I'm like, okay, well, I wonder if there's more potato soup recipes. How do I get to that, right? And that breadcrumb should be able to take you to the parent category for where this post is, but also signals to Google from a logical organizational standpoint where content is being organized. And that's what we talked about, topical depth and all of that stuff.
And that you've got more stuff.
That we have more stuff,
just that right? I have this potato. Yeah, it's not that I have this potato soup recipe, but I have a whole bunch of, let's say, the potato soup recipes in my crockpot recipe category. So if Google will see that, hey, she's got this recipe that you can make in the crockpot. She's got apparently a whole bunch of other crockpot recipes. Let's go look at that too, because as it's ingesting that, it's going to follow the links, and those links are usually very high on the page. So it's going to encourage Google to go discover and crawl all of your other recipes for the crock pot so it can then index them.
I see what you did there. That was a good way to wrap it up. You brought the whole point of this episode into. I love it.
That's why I'm professional.
Carolyn, where can people find you? So you're not a stranger to the blogger community. You've spoken at Tastemaker. You've been a part of that whole ecosystem. You're currently at Yoast. Where can people find you? I think we have a slide on that at one point. Once we're done,
if you want to chat with me on X, I am on X. I'm C-S-H-E-L, so C for Carolyn, S-H-E-L for Shelby, and that's kind of where I'm at everywhere. So I'm on Facebook. I'm on LinkedIn. All those places. I've got a website, seashell.com, naturally, and I'm at Yoast. So you can find me.
Once that article goes live, we're going to include it in our email newsletter.
Yes.
Make sure that everybody gets to see it.
Yeah. Carolyn, so I actually just finished writing it. It's almost 2,000 words long.
And did you get a green light on Yoast?
I haven't put it through there yet. So.
Awesome. Carolyn, thanks for spending time with us. I appreciate, I know you're super busy. I appreciate you coming and sharing your knowledge with us. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much for having me. It was a great time. Bye, everybody.
Bye, everyone. Thanks for joining us.